All right, we are live. Hey, whoever you are, wherever you are in this big blue marble of a planet, welcome to Millstone Self-Reliance Group. I'm one of your hosts, Mark. Over there, that's the other host.
I'm Blake.
And then down below, we've had him on before, and we've got to bring him back to finish up the whole 72 hours. Patrick, without further ado. Hey, Patrick, as always, just give everybody just a quick background, if you don't mind.
Yeah, hey, yeah, thanks. I don't know if this makes like the 10th time or so I've been on the podcast, something like that. But
yeah,
just I'm a government mutt. Grew up in the Marine Corps. Ended up switching over to the Army side. Mid '90s, became a police officer. Law enforcement, did patrol, narcotics, SWAT, all the fun stuff, and then I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, depending on how you look at it. I ended up at CIA with Mark, and that was 7.5 years of fun and adventure, gallivanting the planet, and then came back, ended up working in some emergency management stuff, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit tonight, and then now I'm with Homeland Security in a certain capacity. So with that, I have to throw out the caveat that all opinions that I will express are my own and not those of the United States government.
Right on. Hey, and then on that note, as we're going on here, I don't know if you want a private message or did you send that over to the Millstone email so I can bring that up?
Yeah, there's a bunch of them, so I have to find like one that's applicable.
Okay. Well, once you do, or you could even drop it into a comment, and I'll put the comment up there for everybody to see. But it'll be easier if you give me the URL, and URL Rata Alada. Anyway, that's the new over there, Mark. Kind of a funny thing. That was from the news Batman, but which actually isn't that new, but it was pretty damn good. All right, so Patrick's going to look up some stuff as we move forward here tonight. Blake and I, everybody, welcome Blake back. He just got back late last, or however you want to say it, late last week, early this week, from his annual trip. Patrick, was helping out, and so was Clint, keeping keeping everything moving while Blake was away. Blake's here now. But what we're going to do tonight is, so so that first 72 hours, it's a class I wrote over, 10 years ago. It really was a very interactive class, in person, it was a full day. It's a full day type of class. Maybe it wasn't the right format here to try to do it in the live streams as we did, but we've done it, right? So if you haven't seen them, go back to the previous episodes, because what we've decided now that Blake's back is we're not going to go back and rehash too much of that. We're going to actually take tonight and we're going to focus on four things. We're going to focus on natural disasters, because this is the most likely and commonplace. It happens every year, depending on where you live in the world. There's some type of natural disaster that you should be, more self-reliant, self-prepared, or prepared to be able to deal with if you want to be able to get through those type of crises. Because some of those can be high consequence or medium. I mean, people die. When somebody dies, I think that's kind of a high consequence event. But then we're going to talk about that for a couple minutes. We're going to show a couple things. We've got an announcement to make, but then we're going to dive into three categories or three subjects. One, we're going to call the League of Shadows, and this will be a little bit more clear in a couple minutes. Then another one is going to deal with a biological type of event. And then the final one is going to deal with some type of celestial event. Think of like a solar flare or a CME, coronal mass ejection type of thing. So that's what we got. And as always, though, we don't really read the comments over here. We're just trying to take advantage of time, but I'm just going to read some real quickly. Just let a few more people join in. We got Gene from across the pond. Hey, Gene, always great to have you over here. Thank you, sir. If it's zombies, can we get it to be Zombieland style rather than the Walking Dead types? Hey, what was that? 48 hours or the first 20, those zombies, which are really rage virus, those are the worst zombies. We don't want the ones that run faster than most of us, right? So love the line. It's time to nut up or shut up. All right, even guys. Then we got John. Thanks for joining us, John. He is listening to us while he's mowing his lawn with a beer in his hand. Learn me something. Thank you for sacrificing your free time to do these lessons. Hey, thanks. Learn me something. Appreciate it. That's what we're doing. And we're going to make an announcement on that in a second. Paul, welcome back. Blake, Angry Viking Veteran. Good to see you over here too. Is that a Wooby backdrop, Blake?
No, it's actually
it's
a backdrop from Zimbabwe. It was a tablecloth I got when I was over there on safari. So,
yeah, he thought it would look cool. It actually goes very well with the interior of his house, and but it is not a Wibby. Although, you know what, I can see where he got that because from a distance, it does kind of look like it might be a little bit of a Marpat or some other weird type of Wibby going on back there.
No, it's like an old primitive hunting scene. I thought it was kind of cool. So,
right on. Okay, so here we go. So that was our comments. And again, you know, maybe tonight we'll be able to do a few more comments because we have already concluded the first 72 hours. Now, there was one section of that course that we didn't bring up. We're not going to do it here for the sake of these live streams. It had to do with, you know, beg, barter, begging, barter, barter. What, I can't remember how I called it. Beg, barter, cheat, steal, something like that. And then, you know, Blake and I, he knows the story. You know, earlier this year, myself and CH Paul, cousin husband Paul, were at a location and somebody was talking about one of his plans in any type of self-reliance or preparedness situation was he wasn't going to have a problem stealing shit from his neighbors. And I almost lost my crap. That's when I was like, this guy's an ass clown. Like he's already he basically came right out and said, he is your enemy. Like that's what he said right off the bat. I mean, anyone who's saying, hey, if I run out of it and I need it, I'm going to come and take it if you have it. All right, game on, John Wayne. You know, so anyway, those people are douchebags. That's not who we are. That's not what we're going to talk about here tonight. Hey, you know, how about I've already talked a little bit and I want to get Patrick's link up. Why don't one of you two guys start talking about like the most likely event that anyone is going to experience is going to be some type of natural disaster. And that event could be, depends where you live, earthquakes, hurricanes, flood, snow. You guys want to maybe start that and I'll just kind of get this, what Patrick sent me. I'll get that ready, set up.
Sounds good. I can jump in on that real quick. I mean, you know, here up in northern Minnesota, where we're from, it is not an irregular thing to get ice storms and large blizzards and things like that. And if you're going out in those storms and you don't have a basic kit with a shovel, some kind of form of heat, a little bit of basic rations, some kind of way to keep you warm, because your vehicle might be in a snowdrift and you got to dig yourself out, or you might have to wait for emergency services, then you're a fool. I mean, that's just part of living here. And it's kind of that way in a lot of areas where we do face concurrent natural disasters on a somewhat regular basis. You know, if you don't have a hurricane kit down in Florida ready for power going out or being able to bug your family out or know the routes you're going, you know, it's time to really start thinking about those sorts of things. Like a prime example, in our county, we have limited medical assets. I believe there's 5 ambulances to our entire county. And one of those is specifically for the tribal use for some of the natives that we have here in our area. And the other ones might be out on another call. So it is not an uncommon thing to go 15, 30 minutes for an ambulance to show up. You know, same for first responders. They could be on the other side of the county and there's not a lot of them working. So you have to be able to take matters into your own hands. So
Patrick.
Yep. Yeah. So, you know, looking at natural disasters versus man-made disasters is how the government or the emergency management community looks at things. What Mark will put up here in a little bit is, you know, a link and hopefully we can show a couple of like, you know, just general things for emergency action plans. So there's there's a
you
couple
want me to
different.
present that? Do you want me to pop that up while you're talking?
Yeah, you can. I mean,
Okay.
it's a lot of information. You know, and this is a website that that FEMA pushes out for everyone. And what it's designed to do is give kind of like a framework for local municipalities to build their own emergency operations plans. Emergency operations plans comprise everybody in a town, you know, who's going to respond, what type of incidents do they have, what resources are available, what paperwork needs to happen. If it's a natural disaster, you know, what does it take to declare an emergency so that, you know, the municipality can receive federal funding if it's declared a disaster, so on and so forth. That's not really for you know, what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about emergency action plans, and emergency action plans are smaller, more bite-sized, you know, plans that you can put together for any number of you know, probable activities, right? So we're going to start off talking about natural disasters. So depending on wherever you live, that can be something that, you know, you start, you know, working with your community on. Now, since this is a self-reliance group, one of the big things that we're advocating for, and this is something that's just a best practice, is, hey, get to know your neighbors, get to know people around you, and I get it. Hey, maybe, some people don't really care for their neighbors, that type of thing, but find some people in your community and sit down and have these discussions. So let's say you guys are in Minnesota. If you get, like really, if things are frozen and power lines go down, there's no power. Blake, maybe you've got a generator and I don't have one. Can we, the roads are really bad. Can we get one to me? But all this stuff, here's the basic framework. Everything starts by sitting down as a group and understanding, okay, hey, it's us. We're the ones that are going to be helping each other. We're not going to count on the government because the government may or may not be responsive to whatever the situation is. And we've seen a host of things that have occurred that have proven that to be the case. So we would sit down and go through this stuff. And again, this is a link to a great website on FEMA where you could start building all that stuff out, right? Hey, if I've got, family members in a hospital, the power goes down, are they going to be able to get that up, or, what's the situation? But it starts by identifying basically what we call a tabletop exercise. Hey, here's us. If something happens, here's what, first of all, what do we have to play with? Do we have generators? Do we have food? Do we have extra water? What kind of vehicles do we have? Can we go cross country if the roads are down? So on and so forth. So that's the start pretty much of everything. And then you can just kind of build your plan out from there, depending on the emergency. But these have to be discussed in advance of an event happening. It's not going to happen on the fly.
And that's a great point right there. Let me just remove that, get us back up there. Give me one sec. All right. Hey, so I don't even remember where I first heard this, but this has been in my hip pocket. It's a military way of saying I just keep it in my brain, housing group, or I've embraced it and kind of made it partially mine. The worst time to prepare for a crisis is when you're in the middle of one. Now, if you've had a plan and here's your left and right limits, your goalposts, whatever, and then, your thing was we're all going to go right, and then suddenly you're all going left. It's easier to respond and react to those type of changes on the fly if you already have a plan. Because if your plan, to like something Patrick just said, is, hey, I've got an extra Jenny, or I'm going to take my Jenny, I've got the ability, no matter what the environmental considerations are, I can get it over to Patrick's house, or I can get it to Blake's house, and then we're all going to hunker down and just, and if we had to live together for 7 days or a month, well, that's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, although Blake and I will be arm wrestling over whose beard really is better, but by the end of it, but no,
I'm actually thinking about taking a couple inches off my beard because Alex is finding this as his new play toy.
That is like a jungle gym, right? You should just start hiding things in there for him to find. And
yeah, my mom actually called me the other day, like 2 hours after I dropped him off, and she's like, "There's still beard hair in his hands."
But on that note, so you have to have a plan, and that's something. But the whole purpose of the first 72 hours was to just get people to start thinking. Whatever that plan is, again, there's just so many things. And that's why Blake, myself, and Patrick decided we weren't going to get into too many of the minutia, or the minor details, because we don't want to mislead anybody. I'm serious. Your environmental considerations, your family unit, your friends, everybody's physical capabilities, everybody's skill set, that is going to be different for everybody. So it's incumbent upon you, whomever you are, you have to start figuring that stuff out. But now my argument will be, now more than ever, hey, look, if you're watching this video, it's because you found a way to break through the censorship, because that's another thing that's really going on right now. And I'll talk about that with my League of Shadows example. But you're going to have to figure a way. If you're watching this, you've either figured out a way, you broke through it, you're here for some reason. The next thing, that all we can do is just implore you is take this seriously. Because again, as Patrick and Blake just pointed out, natural disasters happen all the time. I don't know where that's weird. I don't know where the word being prepared, that phrase became evil, or, I guess that's, well, I know where it is, because there's a group of individuals who want you to be incumbent or reliant upon the government, because then government can grow larger and government can then control more of your life. They don't want you to have your own well, as opposed to they want you to be on city water. They don't want you to have your own garden, because they want you to be going to the grocery store, and then possibly when they tell you to go to the grocery store, or what you can and cannot buy during whatever the next crisis is. So, they don't want us all hanging out, and, 1 or 2 buildings on 40 to 100 acres, and really not, Patrick or Blake, to, something we've talked about, not really giving two rats asses if the grid ever comes back up, because we've got it, you know?
Yeah, but those individual groups that are actually capable like that are a threat to the very thing you're about to talk about, Mark, which is your League of Shadows, because it represents one of the few curbing measures that can actually be implemented to try to offset a tyrannical government, is to take matters into your own hands, go community based, go to local, and like the last part of the first 72 that we didn't touch on, you know, start that trading network, start that bartering system, start that interchange of goods with one another, because you'll find out that, you know, so long as you have about 40 unique food items, civilization can flourish.
Amen. Hey, okay, so here we go. So Patrick, do you want to add anything? Otherwise, let's transition. I've got one more thing to show, and then we're going to transition into I'm going to start it off with the League of Shadows and boys and girls. So I'm going to do this thing called the League of Shadows, and it'll make more sense when we start talking about it. We're going to go to Patrick, and that's when we're going to talk about biological agents, or a biological event. We're calling that 12 Monkeys. And then we'll end it with Blake. And I think we're just going to call it solar flare or CME. So this is some type of galactic celestial, something outside of our control. But the reason I wanted to come back and remind everybody is because what Blake just said, you know, under the scenario, and we'll get there when he starts talking about it, the best case scenario, how would you define it again, Blake? What is your best case scenario?
Yeah, if something like a CME actually happens, something that can truly reset the global technological level. Best case scenario, you're looking at groups that are prepared, might have that of like the westward expansion level of technology, the Wild West, if you will. Worst case scenario is either death or you're back to the Stone Age. And my guess is somewhere in between that spectrum is where most of humanity that survives would fall. So
and we'll get into that. But I don't, you know, when Blake and I were talking about this, I don't think he's wrong. I mean, a lot of people aren't going to make it. And those who do make it, you know, it ain't going to be this right here. You know, these resources will not, even if you can salvage some of these under those circumstances of that type of event. And that's why we chose it. We don't know the likelihood of that. However, these events have happened. And in the last few years, we've actually had a couple solar events that have just missed us. And that's the equivalent of President Trump getting shot in the earth. Like if you think about the galaxy and the vastness of space, these things just missed us. And the last time it did hit us was in the 1800s. But we'll get there. We'll get to that. So I just want to do one more thing. I'm going to bring this over to me full screen, guys. This might show up a little better. Give me a second here. I mentioned this in the last episodes. Yeah. Okay. And I can't find my manual, and Patrick and I were talking, I can't remember if it's RTEP 7-8 and then Ranger Reese sent me some of the new versions, but they're not as good as the old version. So some of you guys might be in the military and have done a lot of planning and training coordination on that. So I just wanted to show you, this is not Carver. Go back and see Carver. If you didn't see some of the previous episodes, go back and look at Carver, and because you can make your own grid and start doing your own application. That really helps you take a look at gear. This one I'm about to show you is really more of a way to shape your mindset about what training, what things that you need. So this isn't perfect. I really wanted to have the manual so I could bring up a page and show you, but you can see across the top, I've got, here, this will maybe work a little better. I've got coronal mass ejection, I've got 12 Monkeys, and I've got League of Shadows. But then over on the other side, this is where you'd be putting in. Now, I just gave them generic names. This would be very specific. You know, what type of first aid? You know, is it a tourniquet? Is it stopping bleeding? Is it, you know, so you would have, this list is pages long. But, you know, first aid, weapons, food, commo, and then transportation. I just chose those, kind of a food, fire, water, shelter, shoot, move, communicate, just kind of a hybrid. And then you can see X's, you know, and I could have done that in red. Hey, first aid, you're going to need to have all of that no matter what the event is. Weapons. Are weapons really going to do you much in a 12 Monkeys scenario? I mean, possibly, but they definitely would be able to help you even if it was a CME, because you're still going to need procure food and defend yourself. Then we went down to food. Well, you're going to need to know how to do food in a CME. 12 Monkeys, maybe it's the food that's poisoned. Well, so then you're going to have to know. So that just maybe would make you question, well, how am I going to procure food? How am I going to stabilize food? You know, and so on and so forth. Commo. Well, if it's a CME, most forms of commo are going to get fried because that's all of our electronics getting fried. but you're going to still need to know, but you're going to still want commo and a 12 monkeys and a League of Shadows. And then the vehicle, same thing. Most vehicles are going to get fried in a solar flare. Again, CME, solar flare, EMP type of thing. Most vehicles, not all of them, but so you may not be relying too much on vehicle skills if you're already thinking the vehicles are going to be gone, or you might not be able to trust food, or what do weapons. So you figure it out for yourself. But this is just a nice little format. Again, the things you're concerned about across the top, and then all the events or all the tasks that you need to train yourself up in, or knock off the rust and get more proficient. Score those things, and then it'll help you figure out, okay, what do I need to do? That whole thing could have been done. Here, let me just get rid of me. That whole thing could have been done in, like Patrick or Blake was talking about, northern Minnesota. Straight line winds, major, snowstorms. Okay, do you have the ability to move to your neighbor's house? Well, and if you can't do it in your little car, do you have a 4x4? Do you have an ATV? Do you have a snowmobile? Do you have snowshoes? Do you have skis? Do you have the ability to drop trees and split wood, et cetera, et cetera? So you would be looking at those tasks differently based on the event. Guys, before I go into League of Shadows, do you guys want to add to that? I kind of just whizzed through that real quickly, but to me, I wanted to bring that up. Patrick, I know you're super familiar with what I'm talking about, but well, Patrick, why don't you weigh in for a second here first?
Yeah, just real quick. So, putting that up there, I think is a great. That can actually be part of your emergency action plan for any type of an event. What are we going to need? What are our resources? Keeping it simple too. Score it like maybe a 1 through 5, and as long as there's like a common understanding of what 5 is. 5 say that the most important thing that we need. We've got to eat, right? So I would score food, high. I would also score if you want to include water in that or whatever. Those things are very high. Anything that you need to sustain yourself, your shelter, or if like that, you have to move, you're going mobile, where are we getting to, identifying that. And then your mobility platform, whatever that is, from your off-road vehicle to your, regular car or your feet, that's pretty important too, and making sure that that's all of it's functional, including you and your feet. So yeah, I think that's a fantastic way to go about it. And that's a good example of like a rudimentary emergency action plan. We need these things.
Blake?
League of Shadows, man. I'm ready to jump into it.
All right, well, that's the last thing, though, just because, Patrick showing, and we got those documents up there. I can put the link back up. I'll put the link in I'll embed it in the write-up for the video here when we're done. But also don't forget, in any of these scenarios, you're kind of starting, have some mental framework. Where are we now? So whatever it is that just happened, whether it's an ice storm, whether it's zombie apocalypse, where are we now? Where do we want to be? How are we going to get there? And what are the obstacles that are going to actively or passively work against me and prevent me from getting there? That's a great way to also start shaping or setting up your thought process for, okay, where do I need to invest my time and my energies under whatever you think is the most logical circumstances or the most logical event.
Yep. Hey, Mark, let me add one quick thing there is when you're putting these plans together, keep it simple. Obviously, something you don't want to get too deep in the weeds on. Everybody needs to have a common understanding and put them together as a collective. Don't have one guy like, all right, Blake, write up our emergency action plan for, event X. Okay, well, I don't have any ownership in that. So, what if something was left out? What if we?
I'm done.
Yeah.
Now, oh crap! It's to the wind. Yeah, exactly.
All right, League of Shadows.
Yep,
League of Shadows.
All right, here we go. So, boys and girls, I just chose League of Shadows just because I watched the newer Batman again the other day. It stars a guy who, like the werewolf vampire guys. Actually, he's been in a couple other good movies though too. But I thought it was a really good Batman because it was more Batman the detective. But I digress. But that was in my brain because I was thinking of how to describe what I see going on around me. So if you've been over with us on when we were doing Mission Critical, or if you've ever talked to me on the phone, Patrick and Blake know this ad nauseum. I've always, for a very long time, kind of started really doing this when I was in the agency, dots on a wall. So for me, all of these daily, events, on the global scale, the national scale, the public scale, these are information points or nodes, however you want to look at it. And they're like dots on a wall. And if you start connecting the lines, you start seeing a picture. And it's not like it's a crystal ball and you can predict the future. But for me, it helps me like in a very open source kind of way, take a step back and say, what the hell is really going on here? And, I don't care if somebody thinks this is, clickbait or if it's fear porn or whatever. My argument is we're already in a League of Shadows moment in our history, whether that is individuals knowingly or individuals unwittingly being duped, thinking they're doing something for like USAID, but they're really doing something for, evil or Satan, but, or whether they're actively they are knowingly doing it. And in some cases, if you look at Western culture right now, if you look at Europe and America, well, again, you don't have to be an American first person, but I am. I love my country. I've been all around the world. I've seen what other cultures are like. And yeah, some are great. And some places in the world are very beautiful. And there's a lot of them that I don't ever want to visit ever again. And I love our culture and I love our freedom and I love our Constitution and I love our rights. Evil has to destroy the West. It's kind of like a bad, Lord of the Rings kind of stuff, J.R.R. Tolkien. But if the West falls, it's all over, boys and girls. And these are the dots in the wall. And again, somebody's saying fear porn. I just challenge you to open your eyes and see all of this taking place around you. Political prisoners or political opponents are being imprisoned. Look, that wasn't an individual who tried to assassinate President Trump. There's so much more behind it. And there's so much that we're not being told and they're already trying to cover up. And that's the same thing with the Vegas shooting. That's the same thing with Jeffrey Epstein. Ghislaine Maxwell's in jail for human trafficking. Who are the names of the humans she trafficked and to whom did she traffic these people? We don't know any of that stuff. So
I believe the judge's actual comments were that the details of the case are too scandalous for the general populace to be aware of.
Yeah, and that's not how this works in an actual constitutional republic. If you want to call us a democracy, I'll let you do it, but we're a constitutional republic, representative democracy. But you look at our representatives. I mean, Kamala Harris. If you want to vote for Kamala Harris, go right ahead. But evil doesn't. I don't know if this is a religious thing, but evil for some reason, either because of its ego or its arrogance, always tells you what it's going to do. Evil is out there, not hiding a single thing. They are throwing their political opponents in jail. Censorship, boys and girls. It won't. It depend. Look, it's not going to be pretty no matter who wins in November. But if one side wins, this right here, censorship's a real thing. I experience it all the time. And there's people out there who have way bigger platforms than I do on Centerline, and they're constantly getting censored. Look at Facebook. Look at Instagram. There are entities, whether they are part of a cabal and it's something like a James Bond villain, whether they're all just looking at each other and wink, wink, nod, nod. I don't care. So that's why I like League of Shadows, because I've never liked the term the deep state. But there is something actively working behind the scenes to change our environment, to change our cultures, to change our laws. Well, we have laws that, a law's for thee, but not for me. So there's so many things. So again, you just do your own research. But to me, this is the most imminent threat because it is happening right now. People are being thrown in jail over in the UK for simply saying that they don't believe in this or they retweeted a post.
Or waving a flag.
For waving a flag. Yep.
And I do want to touch on something you said earlier about evil, and as far as why is it that it
tells just lean into your mic just a little bit though.
Yeah, sorry. There you go. Why evil tells us what they're doing. Now, the reason they're doing that is because they're asking for permission. And if we don't shirk that, if we don't say no to it, then we are no better than cattle to them, which means they have the tacit approval to do whatever they want to. Oh,
yeah. Patrick, do you want to add to any of this? I've got a few more things to add to this, but because again, you can go back to, okay, well, if it's League of Shadows, what are the things that I can anticipate? What are the things that I need to start preparing for right now? Because truth be told, boys and girls, you should have been preparing for this, back about 16 years ago. But here you are now, and you've got about 2 months before, because again, it doesn't matter if one side wins, in my humble opinion, it's communism. And the only way you escape communism, you vote your way into it and you'll have to fight your way out of it. If the other side wins, it's going to still be chaos, civil unrest. You're still going to see there's still government entities, both here and abroad, that are more than willing to take away your individual freedoms. They don't believe they work for us, the people. They do believe that they are above and beyond or above the law. And that doesn't apply to me. And you serfs and idiots will sit down and do what we tell you to do. I mean, even though we're going to talk 12 monkeys, just look what happened during the bullshit. Look at how many elected officials and unelected bureaucrats totally went outside the scope of the Constitution, violated people's individual freedoms. Hey, if you're a woman and you hear somebody say, hey, your reproductive rights are your own to decide, but then they tell you, but that doesn't apply. If you want this job, you're going to take this jab. I mean, I don't know, boys and girls, but that doesn't square up with me just from a logic side of it. If it's my body and my choice, then why are you dictating I have to take this jab? And and we can go into that. Maybe that'll come up a little bit more in 12 Monkeys. But Patrick, I'm going to give you a chance to kind of chime in before I continue on. Just my last little comments on the League of Shadows. It's all around us right now. It's hard to put a finger on who it really is, but if you just take a step back and you start looking at those dots on the wall, you'll start seeing a shape of evil taking place. Evil's not even hiding right now, in my opinion. They just tried to kill the presidential opponent for Joe Biden. Here, boys and girls, if they would have, here's what I'll just say, if they would have been successful, it would have been blamed on Iran, and then the warmongers, and that's both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats. We would have already been engaged in some type of warfare with Iran, which would have most likely had some type of spillover with Russia and China, or there would have been martial law and censorship, and that's already taken place. That didn't work, so other things have got to be tried, and they're already doing that. That Merchon, I don't think it's Merchon, but up in New York, they're already talking about that they may throw Trump in jail in September. This is banana republic level shit. Mm-hmm. And so if you've got people who are willing to do that kind of take those actions, where do they stop? At what line are they not going to be willing to cross? That's my comment. Patrick?
Yep. I'll address the deep state idea for a second. I have never thought that there was, when you hear the term deep state, I think it implies that the government is capable of doing just coordinated, damaging and evil things. Having worked in the government my entire life from, the local level all the way up to, the federal level, I've never seen evidence of anything other than incompetency. But I think where this stuff stems is from the top. It stems from the top. You get somebody who comes in as a secretary, director, whatever you want to, whatever title, whatever high level they're at. And then they just push things out to the workforce and say, okay, here's a direction we're going. Well, the problem is, and this goes to the military, law enforcement, and anyone in federal service.
Any one of the bureaus, any one of the agencies.
Gotta have the courage to stand up and say no and to report that type of stuff. It'd be the equivalent of on the military side, hey, I've received unlawful orders to do certain things. Well, you know what? Hey, this guy's he's a colonel. I better do it. Or you could just, actually have courage. There's different forms of courage. We tend to kind of gravitate towards the Hollywood, battlefield type stuff. But there's courage in day-to-day, workings when you start to see things going in a bad direction. Well, you have the courage to stand up and say something about it. That person deserves a medal, in my opinion, because that's not the common thing. That's why, what's his name? Who is the guy that is living in Russia now?
Snowden.
Snowden, yeah. That's why Snowden screwed up. He didn't do anything internal. He didn't have the courage. So instead of trying to do the right thing from the inside, if he saw something that was cross that was going on within NSA, within CIA, and all these different places, there's a pathway to run those things up the chain to bring that stuff out. There's committees of the government that will look at that stuff and say, wow, that's pretty heinous stuff, right? So he didn't do that. He went right to the media. Back to the incompetency of government, though. You do have people that are in mid to high level management that won't question things either, and that's the real danger. And they're not doing it out of any malice. They're doing it out of career protection, careerism. And, think about law enforcement officers. When one of the things that I hear nowadays is, hey, if you were told to go get somebody's guns, would you do that? A lot of the older guys, hell no, I'm not going to do that. Why would I do that? That's unlawful. It's unconstitutional. I'm not going to execute that. Some of the younger ones well, hey, maybe that's something we need to look at because guns kill people. Okay, well, to me, that's, you just crossed the line. So then that becomes a situation of, will they actually try to execute the order? And that leaves us as the private citizen puts us in the position of saying, okay, where is the line? If there's 2 or 3 officers outside my house to collect all my firearms, well, that might be a bad day for everybody.
Yeah.
So. And just going back to League of Shadows, because when you're at this level, it isn't about money. I mean, power is defined in by a completely different set of parameters. And that's one of them right there. That's power. But I'm smart enough, and I'm going to do direct action type of power. I'm going to get a bunch of, jackbooted thugs to break the law, violate their oath to the Constitution, come and try to collect your weapons, totally unconstitutional. Because if somebody does resist, that's going to fall into my other plan, which all of these people need to be stopped. All of these people are different, and then that's how you make that separation, the us versus them. And that gives us more justification for the next batch of tyrants who then want to take the next thing away from you. And that is that slippery slope. I'm glad you brought that up. Blake, any last comments? Otherwise, I'm going to give my final comments on League of Shadows, and then let's move back down to Patrick for 12 Monkeys.
Well, the one thing I do want to say is, we do know some of the key players that would be in your quote-unquote League of Shadows. I would say they're the foot soldiers. They're the legates. We know the organizations. It'd be things like the World Economic Forum, the Bilderberg Group, the power structures inside of that exist outside of government oversight. And I think really what these guys do, because I do think there is a lot of malevolence inside of these organizations, and they realize that through the government incompetence, if they set situations up that allow for possible outcomes, that they can achieve their goals without necessarily a grand conspiracy over top of all of it. So I think that there are organizations out there that have a tendency to maybe not necessarily make hard moves, but they push pieces around.
And that's the League of Shadows. They don't necessarily have to conduct direct action. They're working multiple angles, multiple opportunities, and it has to do with psychological warfare as well. It's knowing that there are some people who it's creating a situation. I know some people are going to react this way. I know some people are going to respond this way. And I hope they do, because then I'll be able to use that as a I told you so type of moment.
Exactly.
Again, I didn't even, this list is so long. I didn't talk about, the Fast and the Furious program. I didn't talk about, a couple $100 million. I think it was $300 million flown over to Iran in the middle of the night, delivered on a pallet. And where did that money go, and for what reason? Hell, it's within realm of possibility. Look, Nord Stream. Yep. Somebody blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, and we know who
Germany wants to go after Zelensky now for it.
Yeah, and that's probably going to be a little smoke and mirrors too. And then and again, and we that the whole Trump thing. That no one wants to talk about that. That seems except for people like Dan Bongino, the quartering, and there's this other guy who does Jack from Black Scout Survival. But I just found another guy, and I apologize to him right now, and maybe I'll try to find it while someone else is talking. But he's done a really good job of really breaking it down, and he's getting, bringing graphics and stuff like that, kind of looking at it from actual ballistics and angle. So but that type of information isn't getting out there. And again, the list is long, like the lab leak, gain of function research. What the fuck was going on in Ukraine? Why are we so adamant about dropping billions of dollars in there for something, and if you know the history, boys and girls, we're not the innocent party. So if you look at from a use of force type of perspective, in the state of Minnesota, one of the conditions you have to meet is you have to be an innocent party. If you actually know the history of Ukraine and what we've done to create that situation, and our role throwing over a duly elected, if you want to say democratically elected government, we're not an innocent party. I'm not a Putin apologist or anything like that. I'm an adult. I'm willing to take a step back and say, hey, but I've been letting my dog shit in his yard for the last year. And and now he's yelling at me. Yeah, maybe I kind of caused that situation a little bit, or I could have done a better job about it. All right. So, hey, my final comment on League of Shadows, the coming crisis. Boys and girls, you got to be prepared. It's the election's not 2 months away. Yeah, 2 months away, just a little over 2 months away. Food and water. So again, just think of the food, fire, water, shelter, shoot, move, communicate, medicate. 3 months. You better have 3 months of that type of stuff on hand or easily obtainable, right? Food and water. we have no idea what type of crisis may or may not take place, but rest assured, you know it in your bones, just like I do. If one side wins, it's going to be game on. The floodgates are open, and then you got to like a little bit more of a long-term planning capability, because it isn't going to just be the very next day, but you'll within the next year to 2 years, your world is going to change very radically. And if the other side wins, well, it's going to be civil unrest, and there's going to be all kinds of their foot soldiers, will be in the streets. So food, fire, water, shelter, shoot, move, communicate, medicate, 3 months. That's my kind of comments there. And on the move and communicate, you got to have all that stuff zeroed. Batteries charged up, getting your batteries on a good rotation so you're never with bad batteries. Go out there and reconfirm your zeros, knock off some of the cobwebs, get out there and just do some practice, start doing rehearsals, even if it's tabletop, just, hey, if this happens while we're driving, we're going to do this, and, X, Y, and Z. Start getting your plans together. Talk with your local officials. These are your local officials. They are elected. You have every right to reach out there and hold them to the fire and get answers from them. What is your mayor, the chief of police, the sheriff's deputies? What are their plans? What have they thought about what might happen in November? Do they have a plan? How are they going to deal with it? And then to Patrick's point, and if they're not, because that's what they're supposed to be doing. Patrick already showed some of the documentation. When I was my last duty position as a company commander, I went and worked, because that was one of my jobs. I'm in the National Guard. We're really one of our main focuses is natural disasters. I went and met with all these people and made sure we had our lines of communication, and we knew who was going to be supporting each other here. And, are you going to use our armory as a staging point? And this is part of what they're supposed to be doing. Go out there and start asking them and find out what their effing plans are.
Hey, you might save your community's butt.
Say that again.
You might save your community's butt by doing that.
Yeah. And if nothing else, you'll get a sense of who they are and how serious they're taking their jobs. And if you just get blank stares, or if they're looking at you like you got a third eye growing out of your forehead or something like that, well, then you better find your community and you better start making those plans on your own, right? Because no one's going to come and save you. And if the people whose job it is, whose constitutional duty or responsibilities are to do that, and if they're not taking it seriously, and if you take it seriously, you got to be your own hero. Because, again, this is just my perspective, and you call this political all you want. It's her words. Look, there is no such thing as price gouging. I mean, everything she's actually proposed is communist, and it will destroy our economy. It will make things worse. They're not hiding it, everyone. They are not hiding it. So you do you. All right, that's it for League of Shadows. I do really think that, again, what that's going to look like, when the Roman Empire fell, not every Roman died. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but your life is, no doubt about it, it's going to change no matter what in November. And it's going to go down a really scary road, or it's going to be a scary, but there's light at the end of the tunnel road.
Yeah, when Rome fell, though, there were several structures like circuses and coliseums and amphitheaters that were turned into communities that held off other people. I mean, it was still a shit show.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. It still was a shit show. Yeah. When no one's got food, and then, and your grocery stores aren't there, or they've been looted or burnt to the ground. Well, how are those other people going to react? What are people going to do? That's why it's the first 72 hours without the internet, your phone, an ATM card. Watch people start turning into zombies, boys and girls.
But don't worry, the bill will still be in the mail at the end of the month.
Patrick, anything to add to that?
Yeah, just if worst, I say worst case scenario, Kamala does win. What do you think is going to happen to the border? By very conservative estimate, 11 million people have walked in the country. That's the reported number. So you can probably figure that's almost double, or let's just go ahead and say 17, 18 million people. That's more population in some states. Right. So if you have another situation, maybe this is kind of teeing up the next topic, but, a virus or something goes, crazy and the communities, they have to start shutting down, because this is where real dangerous things happen, is when governments start declaring, emergency and, almost like martial law to keep everything, intact for your safety. Right. That's always the key thing. add those people into the mix for fighting for resources, and they're coming from third world countries. Several of them are criminal. I mean, some terrorists. I mean, that's just what's reported. How do you think that's going to go? This isn't going to be just like I'm going to get into a tussle for toilet paper at Walmart over somebody. These things are going to get ransacked and overrun. And then they also might try to take your stuff. So going back to the worst case scenario, the guy that came on last time, or we talked about, I'll just take everybody else's stuff. Well, there's plenty of people out there that's their number one game plan, because they're not going to sit and dehydrate or starve in some tent that's provided by a local government. So I'll throw one more thing in there. It's also good, like Blake, you guys mentioned, you get to know all your local leaders. Number one, it gives you a sense of who they are, but also, I think a lot of local municipalities and some of the county governments, they're not fans of this stuff either, because it's eating into their tax dollars like really, really hard, which is forcing, it's not forcing, what it kind of is, the federal government to implement all these higher taxes. So our income, our futures are jeopardized, and the probability for violence goes up. And don't want to be a fear monger, but if that happens, that borders, they're not going to secure it.
Not a chance. They're not securing it right now. All right, let's move past League of Shadows. Let's let you flow right into it, Patrick, and start us off wherever you want on the 12 monkeys. So again, what we're talking about, and the reason we've chose this, Blake and I were talking about it the other night, is because just like the League of Shadows, it's already happening. You can put your head in the sand and deny it, but it's already happening. Gain of function research, illegal, but you can twist and do the wordsmithing game all you want. But there's clearly a bunch of really stupid, smart people who are out there fucking with nature. And if this goes crazy, it's 12 monkeys. Patrick?
Yep. So interestingly enough, there is something being pushed out there right now about mpox and how bad that could be. And that's the new, scary thing. Hey, you can pass this stuff through talking and everything else. And it's interesting that it happens in late August as we're coming up on, election season. So let's say that this kicks off again, having this community of people saying, hey, here's what we're going to do. If you've got a business, I work in the government. Somebody else does something, maybe they work for a company or whatever. That's where having these groups comes into play. And if somebody's starting to hurt from income because it's being taken from them, this is where the sharing of resources, food, water, shelter, all that type of stuff comes into play. If you have a business now, because like we just mentioned, if you've got a business and it's shut down because the government deems that that's not a necessary business, so we're just going to not allow you to open, and AKA you start losing and bleeding money. That's where a community coming in to help you, because if it doesn't, you're kind of screwed. You're kind of left on your own. This is where you come in and say, hey, Blake, you need extra food. Hey, man, I've got, this stuff. We'll help you with, electric bill. If power goes out and things start, cascading in a really negative direction, that's where we start, sending resources to help each other out. Because waiting for the government to do it's not going to happen. The medical piece, right? What if hospitals start to get overrun? This is where you start to look at who are the people going to be in your group. Now, I'm keeping it simple with the three of us because we're on the screen, but I would love to have, doctors and nurses and EMS people in the group, because medical is something that's always going to be needed. And maybe the hospitals are going to be inundated. So we need somebody that can, kind of diagnose and assess, the severity of, whatever the situation is, and then try to help from there. And this just, it depends on the severity of it. But again, having the group ahead of time goes a long way. Oh, hey, I whatever the resource is, we need to help each other out. And that's a true, self-reliant group right there. I don't know if I did that justice, Mark, but that's just kind of it's kind of a huge topic. We go in 100 different directions. I just want to keep it simple by just emphasizing the importance of the community in this.
Well, I think that's fair, because talking biologics, we can talk about chemical type of attacks because, maybe we're talking very specifically sarin or well, that's a nerve agent, but if we're talking like, mustard gas or whatever it is, we can have those type of
events.
That. But when we're talking biological agents, they can come in so many forms, shapes, and the impact, and I think the real comment there, for on Patrick's side is having that community, because look, here, I'm gonna turn it over to you, Blake. But the one thing I'll say to add to what Patrick just pointed out is and I think this was done by design. Does anyone trust their government? Does anyone trust the leadership? Does anyone trust their media? Does anyone trust, quote unquote, scientists or medical officials? They've lied this, for the last 4 years. It was just lie after lie. No one's been held accountable. There is a large percentage of the population, and you could say they're wrong, but it doesn't matter. The damage is done. Mm-hmm. Something serious could come out, and there will be a lot of people who will not believe it this time because that was done. Our belief in those institutions has been severely weakened, if not eroded altogether. So Blake.
Absolutely it has. I mean, and that's kind of the thing you got to think about, if maybe that wasn't the goal from the day one. Because let's say we do have another biological contaminant or some kind of a outbreak or something like that. All right, well, if that happens, best case scenario, it's COVID lockdowns again, which already destroyed economies, destroyed families, destroyed lives. Domestic violence went through the roof. I mean, just the side effects of the lockdowns from the COOF were incredible. And that was a relatively mild disease in the grand scheme of things. So now if we have a completely complacent society that no longer trusts the government, and for very good reason. I had this conversation with my child's doctor when we were having a discussion. She actually wanted to give the COOF vaccine to my son. And I said, there's absolutely no way. And I went through that, the medical industry has to rebuild the trust of the general populace. They've shattered it. It does not exist anymore. Yep. So if we do have the big one, we actually have a real outbreak, the devastation that's caused by that, just even in the early days, because people think it's all bunk, could be monumental. So it's hard to predict for the outcome of what actually happens, because it all depends on the severity of the agent itself. But we are existing now in a point of human development where we do have the tools to snuff ourselves out. And it can take shape in a lot of ways. And that's a hard thing to prepare for. Because how does someone prepare for the complete collapse of things? Well, you prepare for the complete collapse of things just like you would prepare for anything else. You take bite-sized chunks, you move forward, you keep soldiering on, and you bring people together, because that's all humanity's ever been able to do since we first crawled out of the muck.
You will not survive this. You will not be able to do this by yourself.
No.
Period.
Hey, no. I got to jump in on something Blake said, and I thought it was excellent, because that's another key point is our psychological health. And there's plenty of reason the government keeps giving us to distrust them, right? Knowing, having that peace of mind, knowing, hey, I've got this community of people, of guys, gals, like professionals, whatever it is, that we're going to rely on each other. That's peace of mind that's gonna pay dividends in and of itself, and if we can meet together, periodically, have these discussions, talk about these plans, develop them together. Hey man, I'd rather have that than absolutely nothing. Like, well, maybe the government's going to come here and, fix this flood or this, this emergency, or, hey, yeah, they shut my business down, but they still care, like it's not going to happen. Right. So I think that cannot be understated. That's a great point, Blake.
Well, and one other thing I do want to make too is, regardless of what you think happened during the COOF times, every person on earth is in essence a how best to put this, a victim of a psychological campaign that continues to go on to this day. So the baseline of humanity 5 years ago and the baseline of humanity today are two very different things.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
No.
Yeah. Well, talk about children too. So in that mix, right? So having teachers, in your collective group, that may be a good thing, because, hey, guess what? The schools are shut down. Kids aren't going to stare at some screen and pay attention. Let's actually give them education, while this, emergency is going on in person, and give them that social interaction, that face-to-face, all the things that have caused the issues since COVID ended.
Well, absolutely.
And this one is a little bit difficult. And so just if anyone's watching, when we talked about League of Shadows, there are a lot of things that you as the individual and as the group can start preparing for right now, because, we already know what's coming, potential, unconstitutional actions, breaches, censorship, this, that, and the other. But we can't sit and talk about whatever this agent or whatever this biological, whatever this outbreak might be, because that can come in so many shapes and forms. And as Learn Me Something is kind of as said here, again, boys and girls, why in the F is Bill Gates releasing mosquitoes all over what's going on here? And this is supposedly something good, or is this just a field test, or is this actually part of something else that's still going on? And look what his track record is over in Africa and how many. So there's just so many ways in which this can be delivered, but 12 Monkeys was maybe our best way of summing up, because, and it could just be total fear and propaganda and a psyop. Or it could be real, and so many people will not take it seriously because of what our government and what our these institutions have already done and how much they've lost our trust.
There's a serious vector of destruction. I mean, there's a lot of ways this one can come at us. Oh,
no. All right. Anybody want to add to 12 Monkeys?
Other than that, was quite the dance, Mark.
Well, I was trying to do a little monkey dance, whatever.
By the way, my son when he has to take a crap.
Hey, Mark, if you haven't watched, just throwing out there, the 12 Monkeys TV show, I think it's 4 seasons. I watched 1 season of it. Maybe I'll get back to it this winter. Wasn't bad.
I've been through it twice. It's a pretty fun show if you like science fiction. So,
Patrick, you're gonna add something?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go here in a little bit, but I'll say this: if you're building these collectives, these communities, look at people's inherent value. Don't think that, hey, I need a guy that can shoot. I need this badass guy. You need all the things that we've talked about. You need them. You need doctors or medical personnel. Blake brought it up. I started thinking about kids and teachers. Everybody's got some inherent value. So don't dismiss people. Some kind of clergy member or something like that. All this stuff adds up, right? Everybody's
psychological health is just as important.
Yep.
Yeah, because if your head's not on, you're not gonna take action on what you're doing. You're just gonna be distracted and maybe overtaken by events psychologically before you have a chance to do something physically.
If you build your entire community, around lead farmers, you're not going to be eating much.
I was just going to kind of get to that. If you miss the forest through the trees and all you're thinking is you just want to all be Billy Badass, John Rambo, CQB, because that's the cool guy stuff. Yeah.
Have you thought about
one of
not
a single one of you knows how to sow or cook or harvest food, or any of that stuff you can't eat your bullets. So,
I was just going to say a good chef that knows how to cook for everybody and can add flavor will do wonders to morale.
Yep. All right. So let's kind of come over to you, Blake, on the last one we're going to cover, because I want to try to get some of this in here before Patrick bounces. Sure. And that was, we're just calling it the solar flare or the CME or EMP, because it could fall under a couple different guises. But Blake.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, so between September 1 and September 2nd of 1859, the Carrington event happened. And I'm guessing if some of you have probably heard of this event, but it was a coronal mass ejection that happened from our local star that basically fried every form of electronics we had at that time period. There were telegraph lines that ran for several days thereafter. In essence, what happened is we got hit by a massive wave of energy, and what infrastructure relied upon electronics at that time was completely shut down. Now, this was what was called an X-class event. We have had other X-class events since that time period, but they weren't aimed directly at our planet. The reason this is so concerning, though, is this is one of those few celestial events that we do know absolutely happens that we cannot time. We don't know much about. Our understanding of our sun's mechanics is very limited, and it has the potential to provide a kill shot to any unshielded, very heavily shielded for that matter, electronics. And because our world exists so heavily on electronics, be it from our day-to-day tabulation of bills and transactions to the vehicles we use to get to the store and to our work, to the pumps that we use to bring power and water into our house, these things will shut down. If we get a direct hit and our magnetosphere is not properly charged, it is literally like turning the light switches off on civilization. Again, it's kind of just like everything we've talked about is a very hard thing to prepare for, but it is a very real possibility. And it's one of those possibilities we cannot predict, at least with modern understanding in the accepted fashion. So, you know, it's pretty bad. It is kind of one of those things like I talked about earlier. Best case scenario, if you're prepared, if you have some understanding of mechanical, knowledge, if you have that community already built and maybe a repository of information, you may be able to scavenge certain parts of civilization. But I think to the majority of people, they would probably be a lot lower on the technological sphere after the time of something like this happening. So I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in there for a second.
I'm going to let Patrick go.
Yeah. I mean, that's if we lost all that stuff today, it would just be devastating, right? So on the military side, they've been preaching this for, I don't know, probably like the past 7 or 8 years, that we all need to be, able and capable, and we should practice operating in what's called degraded operations. That we don't have any electronics. All these nice little PowerPoints that, staff officers put up on the board to brief the commander, that's gone, right? A lot of our vehicles, a lot of our comms, that stuff's gone. How do you go back to that, that age of operating, in an effective way, realizing that everybody's going to be on the same playing field? That's something that I think that the military would heavily wrestle with. And if the military is going to wrestle with it, then the next people down on the totem pole that always, inherit technology and tactics and things like that is law enforcement. How is that going to work for them? So that even, gives more importance to self-reliance, because you're going to have to police yourselves, and that all this, these chaotic events, they're going to happen there. I mean, there is no ifs, ands, or buts. They're going to happen. So again, having this community of people, now we're having some very different conversations if that were the case. And say goodbye to all your sexy, if you're a gun guy, all your sexy optics. Everything's going to be iron sights.
Irons, baby.
That's it. So hopefully you've learned how to zero those things and work with them. But yeah, it just that would be a crippling hurdle that I think would break a lot of people. And that's where having a group and discussing how do we move beyond, how do we adapt? Because generally speaking, people are becoming less and less adaptable because they're sitting around staring at screens, right? That's going to be an absolute requirement.
Absolutely, it is. And to Jane's point too, as far as the technology, how does one even protect against this sort of thing? If it's big enough, you really can't. I mean, if you want to have redundancies, buy yourself a vehicle before electronic fuel injection, have a couple backup wire harnesses for the entire vehicle, have a couple backup batteries, have them in a lead line box that's got a Faraday cage over that, and it's grounded into the earth, and make sure it's charged. I mean, the amount of prep work one would actually have to invest to try to keep some form of your grid up and running still, some form of your technology still useful, is almost to the point where it's the wrong way to even think about it. It's where can I go that was before this technology? I mean, as silly as it is, I'm an auction guy. I love auctions, and I follow the Minnesota auction websites, and they just sold a printing press from one of the museums for $150, fully operational. And man, oh man, I was like, yeah, I'd kind of like that because it doesn't take power to run and you can print books. And that's kind of a long out thing. Do you really store something like that in the off chance that the grid goes down? But that's the mentality you'd have to actually prepare against an event like this. It is so catastrophic, so all encompassing that your best bet is just have people and a little bit of knowledge.
Yeah.
So I was just actually going back into the slide deck. Let me get out of here and come back to you guys. So I just want to remind people, so if you did watch, the first ones when we broke it down, again, when I wrote this, and just because I'm the weirdo, when I was quoting or when I was citing something, I had my footnotes, my notes in there. Go back and just look at some of those. I know I'd have another one on coronal mass ejections, and that might actually be in a different type of paper that I wrote. But just even from the slides, the first 72 hours, there's a couple quotes in there, and you can see them when we brought up the slide, and you can go and read the articles and read these government papers on the effects. What were these individuals, very smart people, looking at this from a public crisis, public health, public safety? Should this happen? Or, and a lot of it even just, looking at just examination of if our power grid goes down.
Mm-hmm.
So that the power grid going down doesn't necessarily negatively affect your vehicle and some other electronic devices. You just don't have power. In Blake's scenario, if it's a coronal mass ejection, a solar flare, that wipes out everything. So you can, they're saying, hey, within, the first this many days and the first this many months, you're going to see this dramatic decline in population because most people are going to starve to death, die of dehydration, die of exposure, et cetera, et cetera.
I've seen estimations as high as 90% within a year of an event like that taking place. Now, I think that's probably pretty bad, but it's also when you think about modern infrastructure and how people live, and how much food, supplies, water they keep on hand. I think in an average American city, I believe it's 3 to 4 days of food and water that's kept on hand in-house. All right, you turn the elevators off, you turn those pipes off, you don't have the ability to go into the grocery store. I mean, I hate to say it, but how quickly until a city literally turns to cannibalism?
Well, and just before you even get there, within the first 3 to 7 days, elderly, disabled, and young people are going to be dead in apartment buildings, and that's going to lead to disease. That's going to lead to so many other issues that are going to pop up. Then, even for those who are trying to take care of it, how is that going to be managed? Is it going to be like, I don't want to make light of this by using a Monty Python movie, bring out your dead, but is that what, we're going to hope for? But bringing this back into Blake's comment, that to me is one of the other, throughout all of these, no matter what the scenario is, community is going to be key. You cannot do this by yourself. And if you wait until you're in the middle of the crisis, it's too late. You've got to start looking at it, preparing. In Blake's worst case scenario, I personally don't think the vast majority of people can even get their head around the true level of chaos and death that's going to follow very quickly.
Yeah, it's almost unfathomable. And the thing is this scenario that we're talking about right now, it's not, I don't want to say it's not likely, but it's not unlikely. Just in May, we had an X-class flare strike the planet, followed by 2 more X-classes, and then I believe 2 M-class flares. And had they been just slightly direction or hit us in a slightly more direct way instead of being a glancing blow, which supercharged ionosphere, which allowed us to see the northern lights, had it actually, that first one struck hard, it would have dissipated our ionosphere, and we probably would have dealt with a Carrington level event. And I mean, that was just a few months ago. The sun is doing some odd things, so I don't want to say it's super likely, but it's not unlikely. And, this is kind of I guess you'd say nuclear winter light, because it's all the effects of a nuclear exchange without the radiation and the fallout. So this is a better case scenario than something we could do to ourselves.
Patrick, hey, I want to, and I know you got to bounce. You got how many more? Maybe 5 more minutes? What do you got?
Yeah, I need to get rolling now.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, so I know you saw Gene's question or comment. Is there a way of protecting small devices comms from an EMP style event? Gene, Patrick showed something off last episode. Patrick, do you still have it with you?
Faraday bag?
Yeah, you got your,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Gene, Patrick will show this off and talk about it. But before he does, let me just say one thing. On this, it's a device. Somebody is making it. So therefore, there are always possibilities of deficiencies. What I'm really kind of getting at is if this company is manufacturing this shit in China, and if China's thinking about using an EMP to disrupt us because they consider us an enemy, forget the solar flare. If that's something that they are trying to do, would you really trust a Faraday bag or anything along those lines coming from your potential enemy? I wouldn't. But Patrick?
Yeah, no, it all has to be tested, right? And a simple way to test it is, hey, put it in a bag. If it's a cell phone, let's try to call it and see what goes through. If it's some type of tablet or something like that, see if it's receiving signals, so emails go through and that type of thing. But if you are going to use it, like we mentioned before, that's just a test. You want to power everything off, and if at all possible, remove the battery. I know a lot of devices are made now where you can't do that, but at least power the thing all the way off and then put it in there. So test it and then power it off if you're going to use it and put it in the bag.
I would say that if there are things that are medically imperative to have, if this is something you are concerned about, that a Faraday cage is at least better than nothing if it's going to be a Faraday bag like that. If you do want to take it serious, though, build your own, build a box, and typically you're going to use a certain kind of copper mesh, preferably gold plated if possible. Ground the thing, have a location you can put these devices in if you want to take it serious. But even in a severe CME, there's a potential that even that technology would get fried inside of those bags.
And then, Paul's bringing up just on that same, so it's a slightly different type of scenario, but it's the same thing where, so some tech is still there, or, again, and this just happened with that DDoS, what was that, Blake, that just happened like the week after they tried to kill Trump.
Microsoft.
Yeah, Microsoft, right? So to Paul's point, so you can even have those type of events. But now I don't think you're going to have that. That's getting into an individual or a group of people taking out some type of, they are actively creating that. We're talking more of like, hey, if the sun farts and that is right, and if it's he who smelt it dealt it, and it's right in our face, we're screwed. I mean,
there's not much we can do.
To Patrick or to Blake's point, the best case scenario for those who are very squared away and who've been paying attention and who are self-reliant, who have the tools, have the skills, know how to bring them all to bear, have a community that they can, reside with or collapse down into. Yeah, you're still looking at late 1800s lifestyle. Best case scenario.
Yeah. Which honestly, I'm cool with. That sounds better than this modern bull crap. So you tell me I got to wear paisley and carry 6-shooters? I'm all about this.
Hang on. Okay. So, hey, let's wrap it up here because,
Shinerbach.
Oh, you already saw it. Okay.
Yeah. Shinerbach from Texas. Not bad, actually.
Yeah.
So there's learn me something. So, Shinerbach. Matter of fact, last time I saw one of those is when I was maybe a year or two. I saw you drinking one, Blake, when I was up with you. I haven't seen Shinerbach for a long time. So you got a good liquor store up by you. Got to keep that in mind. See, that's got to be part of your community right there.
That's right.
999 bottles of wine a year you can legally make yourself, and 49 firearms of any one model you can legally make yourself.
Hey, that is a lot of bartering. That's a lot of trading. That's a lot of capability right there. Or that's just a lot of, it is 7 months worth of winter, so there's a lot of just sitting around with not a lot to do. So
that's a lot of wine
damaging your liver. Patrick, let's come over to you for some kind of final comments before you bounce. And actually, Blake, what do you say we just kind of wrap it up? We're at an hour 10.
Yeah. We'll close out. I want a couple things I want to touch on if Pat's got to leave, but I got a couple things I'd like to bring up. But let's wrap her up kind of soon. It's good by me. So.
Okay, Patrick, then if because I don't think you can stick around with us. Why don't you just final comments on whatever you want to talk about?
Final comments. If you have the community, identify the right people, and it can start with like 3 or 4 people, and then you can add people to the group. Tell them what you're doing so that they don't think that you're some crazy militia group or something like that, because a lot of people are put off by it. Some might be drawn to it. However it works out, just try to get people with a diverse array of skill sets. Like I said, look at people's inherent value. Don't dismiss people. Once you have that in play, that's where you sit down together as a collective. You start putting together, individual, or I'm sorry, emergency action plans for, pick your emergency and, break them down between, natural and man-made. And then, how would we go about doing this, and how are we going to help each other? Right. Like lines of communication is going to be very important. So I saw Paul's thing in there, like with zero tech. That's why you got to have, the PACE plan, a primary, alternate, contingency, emergency. Emergency might be like, hey, I'm just going to physically drive to your house or whatever, right? So, or to a designated location that we all agree on if we can't get in touch. And all this stuff has to be rehearsed too. So it actually adds some interesting, activity to the mix too, because you're not just putting this on paper, talking about it, and never rehearsing any of this stuff. This stuff has to be rehearsed from time to time too. So with no tech, hey, what if we go with a no tech day? Hey, test it out with your family. Hey, guess what? We're taking the phones away today, kids. We're turning the TVs off, and we're not going to do anything else. We're going to actually, we're going to see what this is going to be like. And that also sensitizes them to, hey, if this happens, I've already been there before. Not like this chaotic, oh my God, my screen's not working, that type of thing. So anyway,
do not wait until you're in the middle of a crisis to start preparing for it. Do not wait until you're in the middle, boys and girls. Hey, and then last before you go, because this was kind of was something you were talking about before, and then Blake kind of hit on too. Blake's and Lermy something are talking about beer. So hey, and that's that might be vital gear.
Community,
right?
Community.
But something Patrick had brought up earlier, and I just wanted to throw it out there. And maybe we should just stop saying it. And I even said this last episode. If you think this is political, or if you think it's clickbait or fear mongering, I don't know what to tell you. Go sit at the kiddie table. That's a rock you put in your rucksack. But Patrick, you kind of said something. If people don't think this is happening, if you're not able to see those dots in the walls, I'll just simply ask you this: why is it in the last 4 years, all of these incredibly rich and famous and wealthy mofos are buying up islands and doing their doomsday bunkers? Like, what do they know that you don't know? And is it because they're just so rich and they're bored and they don't have anything else to do? So it's like the new campy kitsch thing. Hey, what does your underground bunker look like? Mine's worth 10 million. Maybe that's just a weird thing for super wealthy people to do. I think not, though.
Yeah.
Patrick, you want to add to that?
No, you just take a look. I mean, it's kind of like doing a recon, right? You're seeing, hey, what environment are we working on? When you got like people with great wealth that are going off and doing stuff like that, hey, they're friends and they're closely related to people, or they interact with people that have, exorbitant means. Those are the people that, drive and influence politicians to make decisions on their own. So, just kind of stands to reason that these things are happening, by design. So it's time for us to come together and build these things in our local communities. And the sooner the better. And like I said, I'll end my piece right here by saying, hey, if you love America, I love you. I'll throw our UK brothers into the mix because I know they're in there too. So I'll just stop right there, I guess.
Yeah, maybe it's like how about just saying, if you love freedom, I love you.
Yeah,
I mean,
man.
Yeah. If you love freedom, I love you, because we will disagree on a bunch of stuff, but the one thing that matters most, the biggest common denominator, freedom. Period.
Right. Yeah, and being independent, from the government, that's a huge, enabler for us. I mean, it's going to be not just an enabler, but a necessity. So
absolutely,
yeah. So
financially, for food purposes, I mean, we're seeing it day and day. You go to your grocery store, you're going to need people to help grow, or you're going to need to start growing. Because if you want to keep eating and keep your body up, you're going to have to do it yourself.
Yeah. Amen.
Well, Patrick, thanks for joining us as always.
Appreciate it, Patrick.
Appreciate you taking the time. I know, you, I don't want to throw you under the bus, but Patrick did some pretty physically demanding things today. And see, there you go, though. We're all getting older. Not a single one of us is getting younger, right? So you got to, check that ego in the door, take good stock of your mental, physical, all your capabilities, and be honest with yourself about it, right?
Yeah.
Not every one of us can throw 80 pounds on their back and go do 12 miles a day for 7 days straight, or 10 days, or whatever it's going to be. That's, matter of fact, that's an incredibly small number of the percentage of the population anymore.
Yeah. Amen. All right, gents.
All right. Hey, just want to let you know, just if you see it, Gene, across the pond, if freedom means I become a freedom fighter, then let's go Wolverines.
There you go. Build that,
roll, baby.
Build it that
all right,
way.
Patrick. Thank you, sir.
All right, gents.
All right. Hey, Patrick. Yep. Yeah, Roger. I'll give you a holler later, man.
Okay, sounds good. See you guys.
Okay, thanks.
So,
all right, Blake, wrap it up. Give us your kind of final thoughts. I've only got one more thing to say, and then I'll say.
Well, I got a little something to do on the what we've talked about tonight, and then I got a little housekeeping to do. So, first thing I want to say is, although we talked about these as multiple different individual scenarios, as weird as it is, we are finding ourselves at a crossroad where potentially all of these scenarios can happen within a year or two of each other. So, as unlikely as individual things are to happen, it does seem like we are reaching one of those points where, it's been a couple 100 years. Well, let's say 100 years since real history has gone down. And it seems like we're about back at that time period again.
And an inflection point, if you will.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, fun. That word again. So I think it is of prudence to be prepared as one can be for whatever possible outcome. Now, to that point, here at Millstone, we've got some kind of exciting news. Mark is going to be coming out to my neck of the woods here soon, and we're actually going to be looking at a potential training facility actually on Tuesday of this week, where we'll be able to start hosting in-person classes and has some range time, flat range sort of stuff, where we might have the freedom to be able to really expand on what we're doing here at Millstone. And, like we always have kind of said to you guys, if you have topics you're interested in, things that we can now, just because we've just gone over the first 72, sort of pull out, some concepts inside of that first 72 that you guys would like to see us dig into, please let us know. Because that's really kind of one of the focuses here now, is we want to start sinking our teeth into specifics. I'm in the conversations with a friend actually here coming up in a few episodes to do some things like trapping. I got another guy that might be coming in to do some things like some first aid and some trauma wound care, because these are things we need to learn. So look forward in the future where we're going to now start kind of dialing in on specific topics. So I don't know if Mark, you want to jump in here a little bit, but
no, Blake and I will talk offline. But we're going to do something again, probably a smaller episode, but on something rather specific. And the deal. Some of these quote unquote specific topics could be all day conversations, right? And all day classes. But we're going to start kind of drawing it in a little bit. I don't know. We've kind of thrown a couple up. Maybe we'll just do like home defense or situational awareness next week. We've got to get back on and getting, and again, and Blake just mentioned some people he knows. There's some other people who've reached out to us who might want to come on. So we've got to kind of start figuring that out. But that's really, at the end of the day, we're making that kind of pivot. It's not really a pivot, but we're kind of doing it. And then
we're growing a little.
Yeah. And as I saw, I just posted, we are going to change from Sunday. It'll be the same time, 1700 Central Daylight Time, but we're going to start doing this on Mondays. And that actually has a lot to do with just community and everything we're talking about. You want to add to that there, Blake?
Yeah, sorry, I had to say something to someone in the room here.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the thing. At the end of the day, it's about community. It seems like there's a call for it. That was the one common thread through everything we've talked about, is if you want to at least have a fighting chance, if you don't want to go down on your knees, if you want to at least look what's coming dead in the eyes, you got to build a tribe. And,
and whether you want to call it tribe, network, whatever, we all know what we're talking about. I kind of think it's funny though. I remember once a long time ago, Blake, you and I were talking and we said exactly that, hey, how's your, I think it was, we were just not even talking about building it. We just used that term. Hey, how's you and your tribe doing? Yep. And that freaked somebody out who was listening. I'm like, yeah, what the hell is your tribe, your clan, your friends, your family? What do you want to call it? I mean, we all know what we're talking about. Yeah. Get over yourself, people. I mean, shit, I don't know. The last housekeeping, just another reminder, moving it to Mondays, same time though, at 1700. Gene's already said Blake, he likes the idea on the live stream the workshops.
Awesome.
Okay, what else do you got then, sir? And I will put and I'll make sure I have this, in the write-up and look, and here's another thing from just Blake and my side. We acknowledge we have to do way better on social media, and I acknowledge that over on Centerline Systems as well. So just stay tuned. We're probably going to have to do the blue check mark, because it really, just to what we're saying, censorship, it's a real thing. I hate to say it, but we should be doing these lives on platforms like Twitter. Remember how everybody loved Twitter until Elon Musk took it over and then brought back free speech, and now Twitter is like, is the devil, according to the devil. So the evil is afraid of the truth. Evil is afraid of you knowing things. Evil is afraid of you learning its agenda. Evil is afraid of you being self-reliant. Oh gosh, that may be a good outro right there.
It's not bad. Yeah. So, and then that's the thing is sunlight is the best disinfectant. If we can talk freely and openly, try to build each other up, try to help each other out, that is the only way forward, because it is the only way that we have built civilization in the past. I don't remember who said it, but I think it's said best, because this is our audience here this night, is which way, Western man?
Oh. Say it again.
Which way, Western man?
Which way?
Yeah.
Men of the West. I mean, I get it. I like it. I don't know who said it. I've never heard that before until you, but I think that sentiment I've heard though. I mean, so that makes sense to me. Right. And which way? And by that, it's like, are you going to rise up, meet the challenge, and make the world a better place? Or are we going to fail, be cowards, be quiet, however you want to frame it, however you feel you are in the fight? But if we don't expose it, and if we don't shine a light on it, well, then we will go a different direction. And that will be the one in which, Sauron and Mordor do win.
Man, we fall into darkness.
Yep.
All
right.
And I would rather a good future for my child to be reared in. So.
Oh yeah, and I want to be around there to
That's
help
right.
you, teach him to shoot a bow or his first day gun hunting or whatever, man. That would.
Yeah, me and my dad have already been
right?
talking. We're thinking like 3 or 4. I'm gonna build a little 22 for him so he can start shooting already. So.
Hey, somebody who's live, who was in the chat, or maybe I think it may have been John. Somebody was talking about those little salt guns. Maybe it's a good thing to have them just start off with the salt gun,
like a fly assault.
Yeah, the fly assault things.
Have you seen those new fly assaults that come with the CO2 charges? Dude, they'll kill a murder hornet at 15 foot.
Holy crap.
Yeah. They're awesome. Little 6-shooters, and you got replaceable cylinders in them. Like, they're like $110, but they're awesome.
And then there's my final comment. Don't forget, folks, there's a lot of serious stuff, but you also got to find a way to, dark humor or whatever you want to call it, and, and smile and laugh about it a little bit. Amen. Otherwise, you'll just be biting off your, fingernails and grinding your teeth to nothing and dying an early, from all the stress. So,
yeah. Well, I'll say one
last
way,
Men of the West.
Yeah, which way Men of the West. And then also I'll say one last thing is to our local, or not local, but our loyal, rather, people that are always here viewing us and watching us. If you like what we're doing, please share us far and wide. Share it to your loved ones. Share it to anyone that thinks that they can get a benefit out of this, because we really do aim to make this community larger. And we really appreciate you guys here and your constant viewership and your interaction with us. So again, personally, from me and Mark, we really appreciate all that you have done to help us actually start to build this platform. So, and
we will figure out how to create the time. I mean, I'll probably start going back through every episode and at least identifying the chapters for every podcast that we've done. That'll at least give you chapters, but then we still may have to go through and, break things out and do smaller videos. So, which is the goal. Yeah, that's a goal. But let's also be realistic, boys and girls. That's also a lot of effing work. So, yeah. So that's why you need to have that's why you need to have that, that cousin or that, who's really smart at this and is really bored and has a lot of free time. Like, hey, really? I'll give you some gear.
Keep building off what we've done. So, all
right, take us out, man.
All right. Well, again, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for listening to us, talking about what we've been talking about tonight and the different directions in which the future can go. Keep your head on a swivel. Keep building your clan. Keep learning skills. Do not waste a day, because you might regret wasting that day one time. So I'd say with that, Godspeed, everyone, and may the wind be at your back.
Right on. And then I should have done this. I apologize. Give me 1 second. Yeah, so that is the 2nd of September. Next live stream is the 2nd of September. That's what Monday is. Monday, the 2nd of September, 1700 Central Daylight Time. Thanks to everybody again. Blake, thanks for coming back and keeping it real. And I'll give you a holler just in a few minutes, and we'll AR it. And then everybody else, we'll see you next Monday. If you got questions, reach out anytime. We'll do the best we can to help you out. All right. It's never over until you are not defeated until you say you are.
Yeah.
All right. We'll talk to everybody next week. Thanks, guys. See ya.